PHP applications are generally used to transmit data from the user to the server and back. In this episode, we're going to use forms to do just that. We're going to send data from the user to the server. We're going to manipulate the data in a way and then send the data back. Also in this episode, we're going to take our first steps in form security. Let's get started. Let's take a look at this HTML file that contains a form. This is a simple form with two labels. We have, we have two labels, we have two input fields, and we have a submit button. And so here's the form. Here's the HTML for that form. And we're going to use the get method when the user enters data in these fields. We're going to use the get method to send the data to this file, forms.php. Let's see how that works. All right, so this is what we get back from the server. Let's take a look at this file right here, forms.php, and let's see what it looks like. All right, so because we use the get method in the HTML form, we're going to use the get array to get that data. Now, this is what we're using. This was in the name attributes of the input fields. And this is how we access the data that the user entered. Now we're going to store this data in these two variables, name and time. We have two variables of our own that we created here on the server. And let's see, and this is the code that we use to send this data back to the user. Let's look at another example. So here we enter a name, we enter a time, and this is what we get sent back to the user. Now I want you to take a look at something. Right here in the URL field, look at what we find here. This is the data that the user entered. Now, when you're sending data back and forth to the server from the user and back, this can become a huge security problem. So how do we fix it? Well, PHP gives us more than one way to transmit data back and forth. So the second way to do it is, let's go back to the forms HTML file, and we're going to change this. So instead of using the get method, we're going to use the post method, save our file, and we're going back to forms.php. And since we're using now the post method, we need to change this to use the post array. Same thing here. Save our file. Now let's go back to the HTML file, refresh, and let's enter another set of values. Okay, so here we have the output sent to the browser by the server. And once again, let's take a look at the URL field. All right, we don't have the data that was entered by the user. That's generally a good thing. Now, normally, when do you use the get method and when do you use the post method? And the answer is when you are sending data to the server, you use the post method. And when you are getting data from the server, you would use the get method. A lot of developers usually use only the post method, and that's okay as well. Just remember that never use the get method if you're transmitting sensitive data. Now we're going to take a look at one more thing, one more way to secure our transmission from user to server and back. And because you can always trust input that is entered by the user. Not only will they make mistakes and enter the wrong type, but more worrisome is the fact that there will always be a malicious user who may enter data that will damage your files or expose sensitive data. Now, to avoid this, or one way to avoid this, is by using the HTML special chars function. And we're going to take a look at that. The HTML file for that is the same. We're going to use it here. Now, on the PHP side, the only thing that changes is the variables that are, the values that are sent to the variables by the user. In this case, we got this value from the user by accessing the post method, and we got this value as well from the user by accessing the post method. These two variables were created here on the server side. So normally we don't have to worry about what data we put in when we are, ourselves entering data in the server. But these two variables, name and time, were sent by the user. So we enclose those variables in this special function, HTML special chars. And what this does is it will protect from cross-site scripting, which is a common way of accessing the browser and manipulating the browser. It can cause big problems, like it could send your browser to a different server, steal your data, and things like that. All right, we've taken our first look at securing our applications. In the next episode, we're going to learn about loops. See you then.